Okay, so we should be live. I'm going to set up my stuff there, and we're going to wait a little bit. So today the topic is going to be about Rust web app. So that is what it was requested. I mean, when I did a little poll here, this is a membership only video live stream. So I've started to live stream things in ad hoc fashion. So to get better at live stream. Hey, Roberto. Nice to see you. And so, hey, Mushli. So, yeah, so today we are going to, hey, you're the 3 top guys here. So thanks a lot for joining. And today we are going to follow, I'm going to follow the polls that I've done. So we're going to do a Rust web app. And also what I've done this week is I've done quite a bit of live. I want to get better at live. So rather to train too much on you guys that are super cool members, I'm doing it as a public live. And it's just when I do coding for my own little tools or whatever, I do this live. So like this, I can practice better and hopefully I can get better at it. So it's something I need to learn. So today we're going to talk about the Rust web app. And there's a couple of things that I want to do. So it's going to be a live coding, and then always feel free to ask questions that I will more than happy to answer, and then take the time to explain the things and so on. So let's go and start it. So let's see. I'm going to share my screen. Maybe quite a bit on my screen because now I can see the chat. So I'm doing some experiment. This is kind of a live stream, this guy here. This is not the topic of today, but this is kind of a live stream that I'm going to do, and I'm trying to now explain a little bit when I do the live stream what I'm doing. So that is a do toggle, which is I'm using a Stream Deck to control my OBS and things. So that is one of the things that I'm sharing in the live stream. So when I do my little code, that's why I had that there. But this uses the same system that we have over there, which is now I have these little cool things. And now we're back to our Rust. This one is a good one. To our Rust NX. So that allows me to have this kind of diagram over there, and then I can turn it off like that. So hopefully it makes sense. And so let me share my screen. So I am on the Rust web app thing. So again, this is the source code here that we have available. And I'm just doing a quick comment here. I didn't fully did it. When I do a git c is my alias to do a git commit. And I added quite a bit in the git ignore. So that is a way that I like to do my things. I ignore everything which is with a dot star kind of things. Let me see. I don't know why. Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes I don't have the dot when I press. So so this way, I ignore everything that starts with dot except dot ignore, except what I say. And same thing with underscore. That is just my practice. And then I ignore a lot of these kind of things. If I have a Node.js somewhere, some things, I try to ignore them. The Rust, I change the target from being at the root at the end, such as I'm more aggressive in removing them all. And then one thing that I allow is a dot cargo /config. So that is one thing that I'm allowing because that's the way that for now, we are using it to set up our environment variables. So that is what we have over there. So that allows us to set up the environment variables. Eventually, okay, so when I'm going to, sorry, here I'm being slow. When we're going to have this kind of development, and we're going to go there, is the web server, which is what we're developing right now. In fact, we're going to have it all the time running in Kubernetes. Because the whole point in production coding is to reduce the distance between development and production. And it's not like, oh, you are in a cloud environment and therefore the distance is shorter. That's not correct. For example, if you were in a cloud environment but deploy everything in EC2, barebone EC2, and then you deploy on Kubernetes, that will be a greater distance than deploying everything on your local on Kubernetes and on production on Kubernetes. That is the thing I'm saying. So the point here is, eventually, and there's quite a bit of work, but that is what I had with my Bryce Snow company here, using Java and then Node.js and as well. And we had that model where we develop everything locally and then we just deploy it, and it was just a delta. Yeah. So there's some trick to do to be able to do that, and that will be the goal here. So right now we are going to develop that like this, and eventually I will do a Docker image, Kubernetes files, and then we'll have a whole process. And it's going to be pretty cool then, because everything can be Rust and can be super efficient. Now with Rust, one of the trick, and that's how I'm going to explain that a little bit. When we have Node.js or even Java, you can compile on your host, meaning macOS, and it doesn't really matter because, you know, when you compile JavaScript or TypeScript, you don't compile it, you transpile it into JavaScript. But even Java is bytecode, so the host doesn't have to know about the target in most of the cases. But with Go or Rust or C or C++ or Zig or whatever, you have to know the target because you cannot compile. And then after this trick where you can cross-compile, sometimes you cannot cross-compile, so you have to have all these kind of things. But bottom line, this is one thing that I need to solve, is to say when I'm going to have many services like that, yeah, we don't want, and because they are going to be part of this architecture that we have, I put it there, put everything there, you know, where we have the libs. This one needs to be a little bit updated, but it's close enough. We have the libs and we have our server over there. We do not want every time we have a new service to recompile all the libs and everything, because Rust already takes some time to compile. And then if every Docker image has to compile their own things, it's going to be very tricky. So in local development, what I want is, I'm going to say it's a hack, but I'm going to say it's a production hack. And that means that now we're going to have a builder Docker that will build all of these guys and put the binary, which won't work on Mac, which is fine, will be the binary at the right place somewhere. And then the Docker image via Kubernetes YAML will map that directory or file or whatever as a volume or whatever. And that will allow us to have one Docker that compile all of this beast, which cannot be our host typically. So that needs to be at least in a Docker image. And then it will compile all of these binaries, and then the other one can use them, and then we'll restart it. So there's quite a bit of a tedious work to be done. And I've done that in many ways in Node.js with TypeScript. There's other problematics there. So it's tedious to do, but once it's done, it's part of the blueprint. So it's a one-time tax in a way. And then after you can reuse it, and for a little bit of hack, yeah, which is just development, so it's not production anyway, we can get a very fast development cycles. So that's my goal with Rust, and this is why it took so much time, because I needed to have the right project and stuff, and now I do have the right projects to do this kind of work. So I'm going to focus on that. So that will be pretty cool. So hopefully that makes sense. Now I'm going to get better at live stream. I'm learning also with my experiment here with the public live stream. Feel free to ask questions anytime. I will read them. But one thing I'm not going to do is what sometimes I do when I'm a live call or whatever. I say, hey, does that make sense? Any questions? Because we have a delay. And so if I'm waiting for the answers, make it very not very productive. Yeah. So I'm going to keep racing, but if something doesn't make sense, please tell me, we'll go back. Yeah. So that is the whole point of the sessions, and we are going to have a lot of them. And so by the way, these sessions here, which is going to be, the live stream member session, I will always archive them. I will not delete them. Yeah, so you guys can always go and see them. The session that I'm doing, like a lot of, yesterday I did 2 or 3 or whatever, and then today I'm going to probably do 2 or whatever. Those guys is more disposable sessions. If it's a good one, I might put it unlisted for the people that were there, and eventually I will put it in the live stream only, for you guys. So people that have been there or the public will have a little bit, or the lower member will have a little bit, and then you guys will have the good one. But I don't want to put all the sessions because sometimes they are not there's not a lot of value. So rather to have you guys spending too much time trying to find the good values, I prefer to discard them. And then one day I need to have a process to perhaps have the little parts that make sense. Okay, so back to this guy. So the thing I was going to do here is I was going to commit this. I have my Rust Web 10x extension, that you can find here, Rust 10x. So this one. So this one point locally, I think, but you have it on is the same that you have there. And that allows me that when I am on git ignore, I do this. I have the min, which is just give me that. And I have the more that give me all of this. Okay, so this is everything I have right now. So here again, I'm being very careful because in Git, if you commit a big file that you don't want, to remove it completely, because otherwise it's part of the history. So everybody downloads it all the time. So you don't want that. You can remove it, but I always find it painful. So I'm trying to avoid and to be as conservative as possible. One of the catch of this approach is if sometimes you want to do a PNG or whatever, you have to make sure to exclude them, to make sure exclude from the exclusion, to make sure that they get saved. Change. Put a dot here because it's minor. And then I have plus when I add, minus when I fix, and uptick when I enhance something. And it's very subjective, so it doesn't have to be, but it gives a little hint. When I'm doing production coding and when my team is doing production coding, what we have is we have things where usually we try to have one ticket, one commit. Not trying to be too dogmatic about it, but I will do a git C, and git C is an alias, so you commit, I think it's commit -a-m, something like that, So I do a git C, and then usually we do, okay, this is for the issue 34, and then fix, and then we copy the title, usually, of the stuff. And so this way, it's a nice way to see what you have done. Sometimes we have 2 tickets, 2 commit for the same ticket. If we miss something, we don't want to change, do a git push 4. So it's okay to have 2 commit. We try to have 1, but not too dogmatic about it. There's one thing also in production, and here I'm saying everything. I'm sharing all the production tips here with you guys. So if you want to have more coding and stuff, let me know. Yeah, we're going to go to coding, but there's a lot of production. The next one we do as well, which obviously I'm not following here because this is kind of a blueprint, is we never code on main. So main is gold. And when you do a cloud application, so there's many ways to skin the cat. But the way that we like to skin it is to say that, I'm sorry about the noise here, I don't know if you hear it, but is to say that main is gold and main is what has been deployed. So when we deploy it, we put it there. And, I'm sorry, I have still the overlay here. So this is the thing I was saying before. But main is gold, and main is is what has been deployed. So we have a drop number. We'll talk about that later. I might do at some point, my hope is that I will use, so I'm already using this blueprint for some of my clients. And so what I do is say, hey, go to the blueprint, and this is our starting base. Yeah. And then after we make it client specific, obviously. There's one thing that I might do at some point is to take the blueprint and make my own Bryce Snow app. So Bryce Snow is my consulting company, but I would like to have an app that allows the client to see the architecture, the recommendation, and even with AI and all of that. Yeah. And I might put it open source in a way because, you know, it's whatever. And then I will use the blueprints. And so we'll have a good use case of this. Yeah. So anyway, some do that. And so the point is, Manny's goal is what has been deployed. Then usually what we do is we work on the dev branch. And the dev branch is a second goal. So everything gets merged to dev branch. And main is merged with dev branch only when it's deployed. Yeah. So usually you don't even need to do a rebase. And then sometimes we have like feature branch or next gen branch or whatever, or experimentation branches out of dev. Yeah, so that is the way it works. And the developer work on their own branch, and then they do pull requests, or they send it to a developer that merge everything. So we have this process that works pretty well. And that works well for cloud application, where anyway, when you have a cloud application, most of them, you have one source of truth, which is production. That is the last guys that you deployed. Yeah, so that is really the thing that everything should be based from. Okay, so today there's a couple of things that I would like to do. So I'm going to assume that you guys are familiar with the Rust web app, since every time you're asking for Rust web app. But if you have questions about Rust web app, why we did the things the way we did it, or whatever, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer them here. Yeah, but right now I had two things I wanted to do. One thing that I did is one of the live stream, which I think I give it to you guys. It's available. It's a Rust web app live stream. I'm looking at my studio over there. Content, live. Yeah. So it's a live coding that you should see it, only you guys, yeah? Yeah, live stream and QA. So it's, you know, one of the live streams. This one was a good one. So I put it for you guys. So I put it there. And so you have the live. And so I'm going to review this code here today because I don't think you managed to do it, to see it probably. So going back to my little dependency here, to like my little thing. Yeah. So this is kind of the login flow. Yeah, remember? So when we do an API login, the user on the client side, usually that is a web browser scheme, because API is different. Yeah, they get a token somehow. Usually they log in a web UI, they get the token, and then they give us a token. So that is another business. An API key. I'm going to call it API key rather than token. And then this one here is the user kind of login, and then he goes login, and we do a first by username. So that is what we have. If I go to the code here, first by username. So that is what we have there. Yeah. And the cool thing here, and this is the amazing things with Rust, yeah. So it's a little bit tricky to understand it, but that is what I love, yeah. Even in a strongly typed, fully stack-based business, we can have a function that seems like returns different type. That is what it seems like. In fact, what happened is, again, in Rust, every time we have generic, Rust underneath says, no, it's not the same function, it's another one. So it does probably, I don't know what it does, but sometimes they like $sign or whatever. And then they add you know, and it's a compiler that kind of route. Yeah, because when you call it, now I have to say what I want to get back, either with turbofish or by specifying the return type. And when it does, it will pick the right one. Okay? So the function here will, it's not like Java where you do a if instance of E or whatever, and you do a if else. The reason why that works, and so that is a trick, yeah, the catch of that is the reason why that works is because, let me explain, is because of that guy, yeah? Because this guy also take a E, yeah? If he didn't, then that wouldn't have been an E. And there's other function like that works because ModQL or whatever, I'm making sure that they take the generic as well. As long as you can cascade the generic enough, and usually this is why we have the user by, because if we go to the user by, I don't know why I'm getting into this case, but it's actually a very useful pattern in Rust. And even me, sometimes I need to remember, I say, oh yeah, I forgot to do this. But like here, user by, it has, I say, okay, this is a trait, but this trait has to also implement all of these guys. So that is for SQLX. I think I'm almost sure that is for the whole thing to make sure that it works. And that is for my fields business. Okay? So then once we have that, the cool thing is then the one that gets the E say, oh, I know, like for example, the SQLX, they obviously do not know about my stuff has fields, the ModQL, but the SQLX, they know about a bound with tree struct, with tree trait. Yeah, so here, oh, a bound, yeah, this one has three types. It's not tree struct, yeah? The query as with has three types. That is a way that SQLX works, okay? Because you have one for the database, I think, one for the entity, and one for the other one, yeah? So if you do this, DB, that is a lifetime. So that is a DB, the first one. That is the output, and the A is the argument, yeah? And the argument, they have their own macros to, I don't know if they have macros here, but yeah, they have their stuff to begin to make sure that they can take stuff. So that is how they get things. There's a whole argument about saying, well, if you do that, your binary size goes up. That's true because it's stuff, but at some point, the value that it gives back is huge. And the way that the binary goes back up, you can actually manage it, which means that within the implementation, here I'm going to go this one. I think this one is just past it. Yeah, so in this case. But basically you do, so this one is going to be kind of complex here, but let's say, yeah, I don't have a good example here, but okay, yeah, so this one is good. Yeah, so I have E, okay? I don't know the type of E, but then I have EC idents, which is the identifiers, yeah, for the columns. So the thing here, that is something that I implemented in my ModQL, okay? But let's say that here, what the compiler will do is every time we do a user by, like a user for auth or user for login, it will create a new function, okay? This is not too big, so that will be replicated twice, but that's not too big. If it were too big, I could put that in an inner function, yeah? Either within the same function is fine, and with a concrete type. Yeah? And then if I have the concrete type, or I will get whatever I need to do stuff. So I will remove the generic, yeah, and I will have the one with the concrete type. And then in this case, then it will do the right job, and I won't duplicate the code all the time. Like in this case, it doesn't really make sense because even I wouldn't do a call for like first by username for the other type because I will have to duplicate more or less all of those guys anyway. Yeah, kind of. So you have to like judge about what you want. But this is very powerful here as a model. So if I go back here to my sketch, what we do here is a first user by username to get these guys, such as we can create the token. And so here we get the token sold kind of business. And then after we get the username and so on. Yeah, so that is kind of the architecture, the concept. Yeah. And then once we have that, then when we want to create the middleware auth resolve, now we don't need the power, these guys. We don't need those two guys. We just need the ID, the username, which we don't even need, but eventually we can. Or perhaps we use it for this guy here. This guy, you can use username, ID, or whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. And then you have the token sold. And that is what you use to create this signature. Yeah, so the signature is what you use there. Yeah. At the beginning, we were using SHA-512. Okay, so if we go to my Git log, what is this guy? They were cool. I don't know. I need to learn how to use the inside VS Code. Now they have the whole Git kind of thing. So I need to learn how to use that for this video. But usually I do a Git log, and then if you see, oops, sorry, if you see there, we have this guy where we updated to Blake 3. So the way we updated to Blake 3, we're going to look at it. Oh, sorry, a mistake. I need to find a way to not do that anymore. So I was saying, if you do a Git log, you have the cargo things over there. Yeah, you had the cargo, I'm sorry, not the cargo, the auth Blake 3, so this guy. Okay, so that is what we did last time, and we're going to quickly review it. And it's very simple here, what we did. So that was in the libauth. In the libauth, I have two subfolders, one for password and one for token, and they are dependent. So you see that here, I do not have an error for my libauth because I don't need to cascade the error all the time to the parent module. What I want is the PW for this case, yeah? I want the PW to be independent from the token. So I can use them. When I use token, I don't need to know about stuff from PW. So that's why I kind of split the error. Yeah, so they have their own error. And then this one has its error. And then this one has its own error, which is different, guys. Okay. Now, in the mode here, the only thing that we change. So one thing I like to do is we have the token type. So those is the type, yeah, that we have with the token, and then the identifier and the expiration, and then the sign, P64. Those guys are in clear because I need some of the logic. And then this guy is B64U already because we don't care, it's just a black box. So the signature, when we sign, it will always send back a B64 URL. And then I have some stuff here that is plumbing in a way. And then I have the web token here where I generate the web token. And then I validate the web token. And for the generate and validate, I have the same thing. Here's the thing I was saying in the video before is I have the underscore to say it was private. This is bad. I think it's a bad pattern. So I'm going to rename. I will do a commit only for that. I didn't want to pollute the last commit. I was experimenting. Sometimes I experiment with new things that go through my head in just one module. And when they are bad, I throw them away. Yeah? So it's important to always experiment because otherwise we stay with patterns from the 90s. Yeah? So you always want to change it. And this one kind of conflict. That was the thing I was thinking at the time as well, but I wasn't really sure. But it conflicts with the idiomatic Rust when you do an underscore, means that you are not using it. Yeah, so it's not like, a private business. So I think it's fine to say, just to have the normal name. And in fact here, let's do that now. I can do that. So we're going to F2, and I will say this is fine. I already have the, okay. So that will be perfectly fine. I will do a cargo test. I'm not sure if I need to have the database running, so we'll do. But usually I will do a cargo test before do the start. But here, if it compiles, it cannot fail. And then in the private here, so that is where we have the private. The token signature here is this guy. We're going to remove that as well. And so that is where we sign the thing. So before we were using SHA-512, and now we are using Blake 3, okay? The goal here of the Rust web app, and this is just because of my background, we do big apps with compliance and all these kind of things, highly secure and so on. And so there's some best practices that don't cost more to do them well from the start. One of them, and we used to not do it. And it's funny because there were another kind of company to say, well, if you really want to be secure, you do that. I don't think that even banks does that, but we do it. It is basically these things here that I'm showing, which is we have a salt per user for the password as well as for the token salt. Okay, so that usually it's like not a lot of people do these kind of things. Usually they just have a global key and then that's it. It doesn't really hurt anything, and it's kind of increase the security a lot because usually the global keys that you have to do your token, don't use the same anyway for your token or for your password. But the keys that you use for one or the other are usually stored, for example, for us, we store that in KMS, because we use Kubernetes, so that is environment variables that get injected when the stuff and so on. And so we put them on the KMS. The benefit of that approach is that now to do the hash, you have to have access to the KMS store, which is usually encrypted at rest, but you will have to get this key plus a key in a database. So it gets much harder, and moreover, the key on the database is per user. So that is probably the highest level you can go, as far as entropy, I guess. Yeah. So that is what we use. Now there's a trick here, which is before, when you created the SHA-12, we use a key as a key, in SHA-12, I think, or whatever. And then this one, if you see here, we use a key like this, update key. And so the key here, the type of key is this guy. And that works pretty well. The reason why we did that is because there's a cool kind of new. So let me see. So that is minor. It's not, let's clean up, token, private, function, renames, okay. The goal of each commit is not to be too dogmatic, it's just that at least people that are involved in the project should find that dog one way or another. Say, okay, just clean up, no big deal, or something like that. The reason here why we put key here in a dogmatic way, and I'm not a crypto expert, so we need to know where we're expert and where not. I'm not a crypto expert. I don't know, and I could ask ChatGPT, and I think I asked at some point. But I'm sure that there's a difference between putting a key in a hasher and then doing the update for the content. So the right way to put a sort is like this. You add it to the content one way or another. Now, what is the difference between putting the key in the content or the key as the key of the thing? I'm sure there's some crypto algorithm difference, and that I would assume is a little bit better to put it in sync, but both works pretty well, I'm pretty sure. Now, the trick of this guy, they do have a new with a kid, considered a new hasher kid hash function. Okay, so I'm sure, again, in the math, it's probably a big difference. The trick of that is that it seems to be, if I'm reading it right, that is a fixed length. Okay? The fixed length, I don't know, it's 32. Well, right now, I do not want, right now, my keys, I do not want my keys to be too dependent on a hashing of a hasher. Yeah, so if I go to Blake 4 and then Blake 4 say, oh no, it's not 32 anymore, it's 48 or 16. Then it's like, okay, I need to change the key as well and everything. Yeah. So that's why I was like making the call to say, well, I don't think I'm losing too much about not using the key. I'm sure there's less of entropy or whatever it's called. But I think it's way enough for a token. So that is it, the judgment call here that I made. And then we base 64. Now that we have that, everything works. Now, the way that I've implemented this kind of function here is, and that is important here. The thing I was saying in the ad hoc stream is, I don't believe too much at the test coverage number. The highest is the better. I don't think it's true. I think it's better to have only 50% of the things that could break for whatever reason, coverage. So 50% of the things that could break, rather than 80% of many things that will never break. Yeah, and we miss 10 or 20% of things that could break. Okay, so that is the thing. Yeah, so for example, if you have an algorithm, I'm going to do a super extreme here, which is obviously silly, but if you have an algorithm that does 1 + 1 = 2, you could write a unit test about this, but yeah, I mean, yes, you could, but do you really want to do it? Yeah. Now, if you have something that does a login and everything and stuff, on this one, you want to make sure you validate and everything. I think unit test is pretty important, because this, if it breaks, is kind of a pain in the whole kind of things and stuff. And so we don't have to like unit test. And anyway, a hash is a hash, so at some point you can't, you know. But my point was not to try to over unit test this one, but to have some unit tests at the validation. So that is what I had before, which was very nice. So I had these 2 tests, these 3 tests. Okay, I had the display and the from the parsing to make sure that I can parse. So those are important actually, because I wanted to make sure that when I had this kind of format, the things was passing out. Yeah, so that is a from string and then a to string. In this case, the signature will be broken, obviously, but it doesn't really matter, because here I'm just testing that you get the right thing. Yeah. So that this one is base 64 URL, this one is base 64 URL, and then this one is clear. Okay. The comparison is clear text because, you know, we store the clear text. So that is the things, which, yeah, I mean, in this case, that was already, it's assumed to already be encrypted. Yeah. So that was the test I had. And then the other one I had is a validate. So what I made sure to do is that I can do a cargo test -p. So now I need to do a -p because it's a thing there. Okay, I think I have it in the README. So my recommendation is to put those guys in the README because it can get tricky. So that is to start. That is to dev. Okay, that is the thing there. So I like to use Cargo Watch. Yeah. So you can use Cargo Watch or Beacon. I made the video about Beacon. Beacon is pretty cool. It's very cool. On Cargo Watch test, for the watching the test, it's tricky because if you put no capture, there's some errors you don't get. And if you don't put not capture, then you have to always switch back to raw mode and make a keyboard shortcut. So I use Beacon to run things and run examples. For my test, I'm going to still use this guy here. So now, one thing I can do is something, I think, like that. I do a cargo test. And I do the no capture. I like the no capture. I'm going to go and look at the token. And so the way I like to do it, and here, because we are going to target only one lib, is not a big deal. But the way that I like to do it is that every test is unique. The name is unique for the whole at least crate, because that simplifies a lot. When you do your testing, you can just, we're going to test this one. Which one we're going to test? We're going to take this one. Yeah? And then you can copy paste there, and you don't have to do all the things and stuff. And then I also make sure, there's two things I make sure, is I make sure that the big agent, yeah, the order of this is from more generic to more specific, such as if I want to say, hey, I want to test all of the web token, error or not error, or I want to test all the validate. Yeah. And in fact, here, to be honest, I did it wrong. The talk, oh yeah, okay, I did it right on top and then wrong below. And the reason why, which is weird for me, because usually I don't really care too much about English, but it's because I wanted to speak English here. Yeah, so I copied the test function, which was validate web token. But in fact, it's better to have token here, and then probably you don't repeat it there. And that will be allowing you to say, well, I want to test all of the test token guys, yeah, without having to worry about. And that will work well. So we're going to do that, actually. Let me know if it's this kind of content you want, or if you want to do more coding. We need to add organizations into the code base. That might be a little bit more involved than what we can do in this stream or in an hour and a half. I don't know how long you have, guys. But right now I'm explaining that, which is a lot of my techniques of how I do coding and how I always evolve code and stuff. If you want more stuff or more code on anything, feel free to chat. I will adjust all the time. So back to that. So right now here, what we're going to want is we do the -p. Yeah, it's exactly what we want. So that is what I was not 100% sure that it was the same -p, but it is. And then we're going to make one function, which is this guy. Okay, so that we just copy this guy. And then we press stuff, and then we hope that it works. Okay. Now, the reason why I like to have the no capture, space no capture, is that now I can go there, and I can, if I want, for whatever reason, I can do a let, no, I can do a 1p. So that is my, I think this one is just has display. So I should be able to do that. And now I can see, boom, I have that. If I wanted to check or whatever, yeah, I was like, oh, okay, cool. You know, this is what I was expecting and stuff. So I did that when I was fixing the code. If I didn't have this test, I would have created one before changing from SHA-512 to bcrypt. Okay? And I think in this case, I probably was TDD. So the TDD is like everything. We should make sure that we are religionless, and it's all about net value all the time. So it's not about saying, oh, you know, I need to be TDD because I put it on my LinkedIn or whatever. Yeah, you can put it on your LinkedIn, but when we code is we are TDD when it matters, but we don't have to be over TDD. Now, for me, all the time when I start coding, I always try to myself to be more TDD for many things. So that is my stuff. And when I say TDD, I don't even I didn't read the books or whatever. What I'm saying is, say, when you start a function, and more even Rust, because Rust, to do tests like this with Cargo Watch or whatever, or Bacon or whatever, it's amazing, yeah, because you can just pinpoint exactly what you want, and because of the way the module system works and the way that the whole thing works, is that it will always be private. I mean, it will be, you can test your private method and stuff. So for me, this is another thing that I think is being overlooked in Rust is, yes, the system is not perfect. I'm sure people say, well, we can do X, Y, Z, but they solve the right thing overall. And it allows us to be very, very fast here. So between the integration testing, the examples that we can run, and then the unit testing, yeah. So integration testing, unit testing, we have everything we want. So this one is unit testing in a way. And so then after, so when I was, okay, and then after I do that, and then when it's fine, I do the assert, and then I move on. Now this one, oh yeah, because the validate return an error. So here, the check here is basically doing zero. There will be other ways to do it, but this works pretty well. So now the thing that I'm going to do on this is, I'm not happy about, yeah, so the reason I understand myself, yeah, I'm not too mad with my old self, is the reason why I have this guy over there, yeah, this name, and I don't have the token prefix, is because that was the name of the function, which makes sense because that will be, you know, a function that people will use, so we don't need to be too Yoda style, yeah. But this guy here, I'm going to make it Yoda style, and I don't need to press F2. Could press F2, but I'm going to do token and then validate. Yeah, that is where it gets a little bit weird, yeah, because I don't want validate web will be weird, and so I can be redundant. It's fine. It's for testing, and then this one will be a token. Okay, and now that we have that, okay, I should be able to do this, and that will test all the tokens. And before pressing enter, I was stressed. Boom, that's it. So that I use this scheme a lot all the time because it saves me time. I go to one, make it work with one, then scale back, making work with everybody. So that is what I do. So we do stuff, git log, I like to do that. I do the search here to make sure I remove this guy. And then I'm going to do git commit, git c, sorry. And then code cleanup. Token test. Doesn't matter. And then GPO, git push already, and then that's it. Okay. So that is my way of things. Again, if you want me to talk about something else, like feel free to ping me here. And by the way, if you can tell me until how long are you guys planning to stay, I can stay until 1 or 1:30 or even 2. And so as long as you guys want, yeah. So feel free to tell me when you have to check out. So that is basically what we did for the Black tree. And so that is my process all the time. I'm always trying to do this kind of things. So now we go to the big one, and I'm not 200% sure that we're going to, I'm going to work hard to try to make it. So one of the models that we have over there, yeah, deployment with Docker files. Yes, but that I need to prep. Yeah, so I want to make sure that I'm not wasting you guys' time. There's a lot of things that I need to play with. And I've started, I had a whole local branch on that. I think I still have. Yeah, I think it's this one. Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, I need to learn with VS Code how to do the branch because I could go there. The problem is sometimes I use fork. I love fork. There's one thing in fork. I need to send an email to those guys. Is I didn't find a way to zoom, so it's super small for you guys, and so I don't find a way. Yeah. So my goal is to do that. Yeah. So at some point I have that. So if you go to the branch, this, but I'm not pushing it because I don't want to waste people's time, which is actually not even there. Yeah. Okay. So image was a bad name, but that was my builder. Yeah. So I have the image for this guy, for the builder. And again, it's hard to see here and I cannot really zoom, but that is the whole thing. I need to do the stuff. We're going to probably have a folder, K8S for Kubernetes. And I think the Docker file will probably be there. So my current question is to say, well, do I have Docker files there? Yeah, which is a little bit what I have in the what the name in the TypeScript, JavaScript. I have it there. It could be possible and stuff. Or what I have it is more there. Yeah, so I will have services, for example, web server / Docker file. Now, the problem with Docker file at some point our stuff is sometimes you cannot. Well, there's a whole discussion again because the things that I don't want, I'm going to go a little bit here, but the things that I don't want is I don't need this Docker file to be, I don't want this Docker file to be the one that builds web server. Yeah. So I will have kind of a builder Docker file. And this one is the one that build and the stuff. And then, so I need to find this stuff. And again, the big change here compared to what we used to do with Java or even things is the one that compiles cannot be the host. So it adds a whole kind of little dance that I need to do. And the trick here, just to decide, we currently not have set pwd change. Okay, so actually, I think I have something cool. Let me see if I can do that. I got some feedback here that sometime I'm not reading. Wait a sec. Probably seeing behind the scene. Sorry, I'm doing live crafting here, or whatever it is. Okay, so now you see it there. Yeah. So that is a good question. Yeah, we currently have no default set password and change password. Should there be any other step for the token? So other than checking whether a password has been set previously and stuff. Yeah. So we do not have, this is a good point. Let me think about it. So first of all, we do not have a register API. So that is one thing that probably at some point we need to add a register API. The way I will do a register API is, let me show this guy. The way that I will do a register API is I wouldn't have obviously a RPC because in my head the RPC is is for things that are logged in my head. Sorry, in this application design, the API/RPC is for things that are logged in. If I were going to do an API RPC for everybody, people that are not logged in, I will probably namespace it like a PAPI, like public API or whatever, /RPC, such as I have the endpoint that I know goes there and then, is tight. And then I have the endpoint that is public. So that is what we have in our code today. In our code, if we go, sorry. If we go there, the route RPC, we should have, we should have the middleware here, which is require. We should be require middleware context require. So it requires a context, okay? So this route RPC say, you cannot call me if you don't have the context, which is basically if you're not logged in, okay? So I will have another kind of route RPC, probably routes public RPC, that wouldn't have this, this route layer. Yeah, hopefully it makes sense. Now, going back here to the requirement to say, hey, how will we do a register? So that will do a register like that. Okay, so we'll have a register and then the register. So that will be the API that if the user uses a web app, it's not logged in or whatever, they can click register and then that will create the stuff with a password and stuff. Now, there's another use case, which is now you have an IT admin user that is going to invite someone, or you want to have the reset password or all these kind of things. Yeah. So for example, you forgot your password. How do you get back the password? Yeah. So for that, the beauty of this token system works extremely well for that as well. Yeah, because you can put the expiration on 24 hours or 12 hours or 6 hours, whatever you want. And that is a token. So it doesn't, you can have another token salt if you want, or you want to use this token, it doesn't matter. And you will have a forgot password, resets or whatever. And then with that, it will allow the user to say, if I click on the link and the link has this token in the URL, okay, because those are base 64 now. So you can have those in the URL. And then when you have that, then you want to consume it, because the less is stick over there, the better it is. And then you can give the user a way to change the password, because you know the stuff, and then you will get a specific token. You will probably take this token, and then you will be able to call your server, and then if you have this password reset token, the good one, then the user will be able to change the password. Okay, so that is one way. So typically what you want, the way we do it in production application is we did that at the beginning. No, actually, what you don't want is to have an admin being able to set the password for someone else. Yeah, that shouldn't be, it doesn't have to have this feature. Now, that being said, obviously you see that when you are running our application, we obviously have a password set up. Yes, because, for example, if I go to examples, and then I go to quick dev, you see, I log in as a user and password demo, welcome. And that is because, so somewhere we were managed, and here is not a hack. Yeah, we didn't want to do that a hack and saying, well, if it's welcome or demo one or for these guys, we're going to accept it. So that will be very, very bad coding. Yeah. So what we did is we had the things where in the seed, so in the tool, we have this tool to be able to generate. So that is a tool to generate the key and to base64 URL encoded. It could be base64 encoded. I just normalize everything on base64 URL. And so that is what we're setting over there. So we have this service password. So that is a prefix for the service. And then that is a password key. And that is a global token key. Okay. So now that we have that, there's a seed somewhere. Let me see if I can find seed agent, seed staff, seed users, username. Okay, so this one is for test. I think, no, it's not for test, it's for core. There's a one here. So if I'm going to do demo, welcome, I guess. Okay. Okay, so that is the initDB, sorry. So that is the initDB. So we have the password welcome. And then we have a code here, which is update password. So the update password will update a password because we want to be able to update the password, obviously. Yes? So the user should be able to say, I want to update my password. Yeah? So that is the things. Now, the reason why there will be a thing to say, well, the update password, and that will be a good argument. You say, why do you have the user ID? You know, as an argument of the staff, it should take it from CTX. Well, then, so that wouldn't be wrong, actually. Yeah, so then we could say, okay, update password, only update the password of the guy that has been logged in as a CTX. In this case, the reason why I did it is because I said, well, I want to make sure that the admin, so here's a CTX, is a root CTX. Yeah, so we need that because the way that we're designing the Rust web app things is to say, I don't want to have the Rust web app system calls and everything, bypassing everything. Yeah, so in a way, you still have your root CTX, and that is superpower, and then you can core stuff. Eventually, and this is not now, yeah, but we're going to have many more videos about this stuff, but we're going to have an access control system, layer, whatever we want to call it, which is going to be at the data level, at the model level, and not at the web level. On the web, we authenticate, make sure that the user is who he say he is, she is. The authorization, who can do what, is at the data layer. Once you've done that, it's cool because, as we say before, yeah. So hopefully I answer your question here, probably too much and everything. Let me know if I didn't answer your question, Dave. I'm going to call you Davizer or Dave, yeah. So if I go to Sketch here, because remember in the architecture, yeah, we have the core. And that is our core business that allows us to access the data with all of the access control. So the core will have all the access control. And because it will have all the access control, then you can put it in any service you want that needs it. So if you have two web servers, one for the end user, one for IT, you can use the same core. And then everything uses the same core. Yeah, so that's the concept of the approach. Okay. So in this case today, we already have an update things. I'm using, I say, well, update is going to be is going to allow to give a user. There will be a good argument to say, hey, let's split this method in two. We have an update password, which is just CTX. takes the user of CTX. Too bad if it's not you. And then the other one is more something for the IT admin, which might be on a feature almost. And then you will include that only either for test, yeah, because we need it for test, or for dev, or for these kind of things. So there's also a thing here. I mean, you all know, obviously, features in Rust. And that's kind of unique. And it kind of allows us to have the thing to say, hey, we have a dev feature where we have an update underscore PW underscore dev, for example, dev or dev update or whatever we want to call it. And that will be used in dev, in test, and it can also be used in an IT server, perhaps. But again, for me, it wouldn't be used in a production, even an IT server, because the right way of doing it is to have the IT admin say reset password. There's a URL and there's a one-time change. Okay? So what we don't want is, and I'm not finger pointing anything, yeah, but when you do a system, a production system, it's all about security. It's about surface attack, and an admin is a weak point. Yeah? So it's not like we shouldn't trust admin, but we need to scope it. Yeah? So they shouldn't be able to change password and stuff. And so once the password is changed, if the user cannot change it, it's like, well, I'm sorry, I couldn't change my password. Yeah, because the URL was already used. So in this way, the admin cannot be a bad actor. I mean, it can. It's harder. Hopefully that was helpful. So I'm going deep into, I really enjoy all these kind of things because that is what I'm doing when I'm architecting and designing application. And this is what I'm always thinking about when I do the blueprint. And then I give the blueprint to my team for the client. That has been working extremely well for 15 years. And there's all of these little nuances here. The benefit of having this thought process and thinking blueprint rather than frameworks is that rather to have frameworks to do these kind of things or whatever. Yeah, at some point we are doing a medical application and then people say, well, why you don't use WordPress, believe it, or like Drupal or something like that. I was like, okay, what are we talking about? It was a video annotation platform. And the reason why they say that, and they had kind of a point, was to say, well, you have to rebuild this whole user system and things with the tokens, the keys and stuff. And the trick is once you have the right pattern and once you implement it once, it's done. And it's not more code than using JWT. Yeah? I would argue here that token sign, that is not that big of a deal for web token. Yeah, it's relatively simple and we don't need a framework and stuff. Now, if you get a web token from somewhere and a JWT from somewhere and you need to somehow check the roles, which is for me is definitely not secure, then I can understand it's like, oh, okay, I want to have a little crate that allows me to unparse this standard. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. But for your token, for our token, we don't need that. The beautiful things about the token, and this is why I'm most passionate about that, which is kind of weird to be passionate about such a small thing, but is that this scheme, we can use it for web token in the cookie, which is what we're doing right now. But as I was saying today, password reset, same scheme. Yeah. You might add another key to make sure that you might have another key for a password reset key, a global key, and then you can use a token salt key. Yeah? So token salt key, another key stuff such as, you don't have a bug if, whatever, such as you really need to call the function that does the stuff. And then you have another validate function, but it's the same scheme. Yeah. Or you generalize your functions. You can do that. But the point is that this scheme is super portable. So that is one thing that the JWT did very well. I liked it a lot, which is a partitioning with a dot and base64 URL for the parts. And that is very good because then we end up having something which is very portable. You can put it as a cookie, but also as a URL. That's super nice. So that is the things. Well, on the 1 hour mark. Let me know. I can talk for 10 hours, guys. So you have to let me know here when you guys are, you know, when you're checking out. But I will see I guess. So next one here. So we have that. I think I'm sorry, I always have this kind of stuff. I think we bid on this one pretty well. And so now what I would like to do is to create the first pass at the org. Let me see the models that I have. So the thing I like here is we see the models that we have over there. We have the store, which is the things that access the database. We have the base, which is all our utilities that are reused. Yeah, so we have our CRUD function over there. Yeah, that allows us to, so that is utilities function. Yeah. So CTX, and it talks the model controller. So that will be the base stuff. So that's the way we can reuse things across stuff. And then we have the ACS, which is the access control system layer or whatever. It's not done yet. And then the goal of this layer will be that, let's take one, for example. I'm going to take one that is relatively simple. Okay, so we have our conv BMC, okay? And our conv BMC is going to be, so I don't know, I think I already talked about this last time. I don't know in which one, but our conv BMC is the one that access the conversation object, yeah, the conv entity. And so the goal here will be that within, I think I put it here, we'll have a decorator, an attribute that have these kind of things where you say require privilege, and then we have some notation here, which is not going to be this one, but I need to design it and stuff. But that will be the privileges, not the roles. Yeah, role that expanded into a set of privileges. And these privileges that will be stored, cached under CTX. So CTX will have an inner mutability, and then the access layer. Yeah, so when we are going to add that over there, yeah, that will basically inject a function inside the body, which will be assert, privilege, any of, or whatever. And that will be the string of these guys. Yeah, something like that. And then we'll have CTX and the model manager. Okay. So that will be something. There might be more. There might be something also at the end or whatever. But that is a goal. And so question mark over there and stuff. So that is going to be the goal. Yeah, we put that there, such as we don't have to add that. But at the beginning, when I'm going to code it, and this is important when we do Rust coding. Don't start with macros. Yeah? Start by having good code design. And then macro is to make it dry. Yeah? Don't repeat yourself kind of business. So first, good code design. I have a good guy here that is there. In my Discord, there were some very good questions. It's to say, what if you want to check if you have access to this guy? So here, the trick is add on conversation. So here, if I have a conv add message to say, you know, I want this guy to make sure that he has the add message privilege, where I need to tell the function, you know, the ID of this conv, yeah, because it will be a table somewhere, which will conv role. So usually in the database, you start by just storing roles, yeah. But in the code, so that is the trick. Database or whatever, you store roles. In the code, you validate privileges. When you do that, it's heaven, because then later you have the flexibility to make the privilege of the roles dynamic. If you validate roles in your code here, then done. Yeah. Then you're in a role and then you try to add privileges, dynamic and stuff. It's get a nightmare. So this is why code should validate privileges, which is one of a time. And a privilege can belong to one or more roles. Okay? And is on something. So that's why there's this little kind of prefix here that is that's for conversation, that is for org, so that will be probably something like that, and that is for space. Yeah, but I don't know if we even have space. So that is a way that the thing will work. I make that works. I have something here that I haven't designed and say, okay, how do I pass my to the assert privilege stuff thing? So I will probably pass an enum that will be, for example, this is where Rust is very cool. Yeah? So I hope you're okay with the format here. I'm explaining a lot of things that goes to my head when I'm implementing production stuff. So here the thing is, I don't want assert to have some sort of type here and having all of that. I want these guys to be relatively generic in a way. Because otherwise, over-typing is going to be tricky. At the same time here, I'm going to have different objects. So for example, in this case here, we have conversation. We have agent. I might scratch it, I don't know. But we have conversation. We have user, where, yeah, we don't have more. And then we have message somewhere. I don't know. Oh yeah, conversation message, okay? Okay, conversation message. So just to tell you one thing I don't like is conv_message is an entity on itself. Conv_user, it's a relation table. So I don't like, they look alike. And so I don't like the asymmetry here, but that's another topic. And I don't know if there's a good solution for that, just to explain you what goes through my head. So bottom line is, what we're going to do here in the Rust web app, and I'm going to start. One is we're going to add organizations. And then the organization are going to be, so the goal is to do a multi-tenant application. There's a lot of people that have strong opinions, and I don't like the word opinions. I like the word perspectives, because for me, opinions is based on beliefs and perspective is based on expertise. Okay, so I'm going to give the credit of perspectives to many people, and they say, well, if you don't have multiple databases, one database per client, this is not multi-tenant. I don't think that is, I mean, actually, it's not my perspective. Then there's another one that say, well, if you have a user that can belong to multiple organizations, then, or multiple tenant, then it's not a multi-tenant architecture. Again, that is not my perspective. There's many different ways of doing multi-tenants. The goal of multi-tenancy is to make sure that the organization or the tenant is your key, meaning that it's your most important segregation. So everything should be segregated with your tenant. So, for example, in the database, if we go back, so we're not going to implement it, but we're going to talk a lot about it. If we go back to our schema, yeah, so that is our database. Yeah? We have our schema, we have users, we have agent, we have our conversations and everything. When we're going to add our organization, I'm going to do that. And actually I'm going to, so that would be our tenant. Yeah, you can call it tenant, you can call it org. I'm going to call it org. I'm going to put it on top because in a way it's a big guy. And then we have the name. Okay, and then the name, we're going to do something like that. Now you can have many other things, but in all of my items, I always have these guys. And so that is super important when you do production coding. And I don't want to use production coding as the whole stuff. But the point is, what you want is to make sure that you keep the data that are cheap to keep. Yeah, hopefully it makes sense. Meaning, when you create an item, it's very cheap to say who created it, at what time you created it. And when you modify it, it's very cheap to create the stuff. So rather to have a table or have tracing on all these kind of things, which is good too. You don't want to lose the opportunity of capturing what is cheap to capture and a high value to consume. Yeah, because that has a lot of value. So for me, this is when you see that in my BMC and stuff, I have this has timestamp and everything, because sometimes some might not have, but usually they all have a timestamp, and that adds a lot of value. That means that you always need a user to create an org. So that means that either you have an invalid user ID, yeah, because we have no null here, or either you have what I was saying about the root user, where the root user can be, you know, user 1 or user 0 or whatever you want to have it. Yeah? And that will allow you to scope the root here and then making sure that your CTX get the users. So that is one thing that I like to do quite a bit. Yeah. So this is the way I will create the organization. And then, okay, and I don't know if I'm going to run it today here, I don't, because it could be cumbersome, but then once we have that, so that create things. Well, now I'm okay. Now I'm stuck here. I want to run it. Now I'm curious. So I'm going to do Command K stuff. I'm going to pin this guy. This guy here, we're not going to do that, but you got the point, yeah? Stuff. So the trick here is that the CTX might have org ID somewhere. But in my enum, I'm sorry here, I'm jumping back and forth here. On this guy here on the asset, just to finish this one, I might have something like entity context. I overuse the word context, but here's the things. So and I'm weaving, I guess. I'm going to explain how this goes back to the schema, yeah, the create schema stuff, the org thing. My point is, when you build an application, you have to decide which objects are going to have their own privilege scope. You don't want everything to have a privilege scope. So the trick is to say, well, we're going to have org, obviously. So when you create an org, you need to have users here that are the privilege of locking users, you know, or inviting users, or creating new conversation, or whatever, or projects or whatever. So one thing that we'll probably add there is the concept of projects. I like the concept of workspace, but sometimes workspace is sometimes too abstract. And so I will probably have org project conversation. It's a little bit like ChatGPT now. They have projects and everything. So a project is a container, could be workspace or whatever. And then conversation is another container. So when you build this kind of application, you say, okay, I want to have a set of roles at the organization. I want to have a set of roles as a project guy. And I want to have a set of roles at the conversation layer. That's fair enough. Yeah. So you decide that. That will add complexity, yeah, because now you are going to have a table that say, what does this user has as a role on this conversation? What does this user has a role in this conversation? Now, the trick about the access control is that you can have, sometimes you don't have to have role explicit. Yeah, you can have implied roles. So for example, that is what we have with the @ here. I don't want to go to things, but this one is kind of an explicit role. Let's say that. So full access is bad. because full access is too much in a way. It's almost a role. But yeah, so that's why I don't like the full access. Yeah, so here we have full access and stuff. It's almost like a role business, so it's tricky. But the point is that here we're saying PRGs, yeah, the project full access. We'll talk about this later. But then after we can say, well, for conversation, if the user ID of the guy is the owner ID colon of this, he can do the add message. Yeah, so this way, it allows us to, when I create a conversation, I don't need to be added the role, perhaps. Yeah, I don't need to be added the role owner, because in my code, I have this implied privilege. Yeah, so that allows me to not have the role owner and then to kind of map it. And this could be, any field I want. And so that is the convention of this add. That is just my convention for the ACS. Yeah, so that allows us, like when you create, for example, an entity and you want to have something as an owner, that allows you to do that without having an owner role. But you can create an owner role if you want. Yeah. The point is you have to decide all of your objects that will have this kind of thing. So for example, for us, we're going to have entity, and here we're in a conversation. The container is conversation, yeah, because we do an add. So we're going to have conv. So the entity context is a conv, and then inside, I will need to give, I'm sorry, I'm slow, and that is where it gets a little bit tricky. And we'll be able to give the conv ID, okay? Because this is conv ID. Now, the trick is, how do I get that? Well, right now, it's inside this guy, yeah? Conv ID. So the trick is, this guy doesn't know, I don't want this one to know about message. So what I can do is a trait that will do a get conv ID or something like that. Yeah, so I will do message C. It's ugly here, like it's in Java base, but get conv ID. Okay, so this way now I'm going to have this type implementing get conv ID. Okay, and in fact I can go even further. I think I could have a trait, because here I wouldn't need a trait in a way. Yeah, I could just implement a function on the type. But what I could do is implement a trait that have something like get container context, and that will return the entity context. The name is not there yet, but hopefully you understand the concept. And that will return conv. And then with the ID here that this guy has. Yeah? So that will be a trait. And the trait return only one type, which is entity context. Okay? So the nice thing about that is that now is I just need to implement these guys to wherever I want. And then the message is going to say, well, I know who is my container. It's this guy. Yeah? And then it will do something. Again, the name is not right and stuff. But once I have that, you can see that now the only thing I can do is, the Rust compiler will know that this one implement the container context trait. And then even if I wanted to have here this kind of a E for whatever reason, then I could bound it also to container context, and then my assert will work. Okay? And so I can do that, or inside my assert, sorry, I'm thinking as I'm talking, I could also just have that. yeah, because my assert privileges any off, that will be a trait, yeah, which will have the container context or the entity context or whatever we want to call it, yeah, which will have the entity context trait or whatever. And then this one we call the function, and then that's it. So then that, because the important thing here, we want to be able to be that, we want to be able to generate it from a string like that. So we cannot add too much code there because we could add it us, but then when we want to make it a macro, we'll be stuck. Yeah. So that is why it's important to think about all these kind of things, such as then after this one is dumb. Yeah, dumb is a new smart. So what we want is the assert privileges any off is smart inside to do its job, but is dumb outside. Just take these two guys and then that's it. Yeah. Anyway, that was long, but it's actually, that was pretty, I just designed it on the fly with a lot of thought I had before, but I think it's pretty good. Any question here? We're like marking 1 hour and 30. I hope you guys are okay. We can go 30 minutes more, I guess. And then we'll see if that doesn't work. It doesn't really matter. I will do the prep. And then in our next, we can see what I've done on this guy. So the org here, I have all of these guys. I'm not going to do it now because I want to see if everything compiles and I didn't break everything. So I like to make the things very incremental when I move forward. So right now I'm just going to change the SQL. Often when I change the SQL, it kind of breaks. Often is because I have a comma at the end, and then I have some surprise. So I'm going to try to run it to make sure that everything works. But the point here is that once we have the org, and I don't do that for other entities, yeah. So like for project and conversation, we're not going to have. I mean, we'll have conv_id and project_id to whatever needs to be, but it's not going to be a blanket one. Yeah? But for organization, because it's a tenant, yeah, we cannot put organization there because we're going to say, in our case, we want a user to be able to belong to multiple organizations. Okay, that's fair. The agent here, I don't know what I'm going to do with this beast, but this guy, I'm going to make it. So the PK is still ID, but I'm going to have an org ID. So to every object, and the many-to-many is the exception, might be the exception. We'll have a big int, not null. So that would be the design. The beauty about this design here is that when you're creating a production application, you want to make sure, and there's multiple ways of doing it, that when you receive an API, you are receiving it only for one org. And you want this way of saying this one org, you want to have it in almost in the API signature. It's not like, oh, give me a conversation ID and then I will look at which org it is. Org should be treated like almost like a first-class segregation point. Sometimes I put even the org ID as part of the API path, which is completely fine. It's very well segregated. Then there's a very few APIs for IT admin and everything that are multi-orgs, or even for the user sometimes if you want to see the notification across orgs. But those ones are very scoped to be very, very small and not very informative. So I make sure that those APIs that are cross-org, they do not leak any PII, personal information, yeah? Or they don't leak PHI, which is a healthcare staff or whatever. Yeah. So what you want is to have these APIs that always go to an org in a way. You can do it in the path, or you can do it as a header. That's fine. This means that when you log in a way, yeah, you can do it in both ways. Yeah. I like the pathway, it's very simple. And that means that then in the ACS system, you can, Roberto, see you. It was a lot of information. So in the response of the request, now in our ACS layer, what we can do is to say, hey, this query was for this org. So now, whatever I'm sending back entities, I can have a generic checker to make sure that everything has the right org ID. And so that is like airport security, where airport security is a bad example, but in a security system, you want to have security layers that doesn't have the same algorithm in a way. And this algorithm is not like about roles and privilege or whatever. It doesn't look privileges and stuff. So it's not enough by itself, but it's a nice additional layer to say, you query what about org 123, and in one of the items is org 124. A break. Something wrong somewhere. Someone did a wrong SQL somewhere. Something is wrong. So we will add that. That will take time, but this adds a lot to the security of a system. Yeah. So hopefully that will be stuff. Okay. So that will be the way. And I think we're going to call it a video here. But one thing I can do here, we have the org. So I'm going to keep this one. And then the only thing I want to do, and it's something I do. So first, I'm going to have my terminal. And I'm going to run that in my Docker. Okay. So that run the Docker, you're not going to see much. It's very small, but that's fine. So I have that in the background here. And that's perfectly fine. So usually I don't have that in my stuff. I have that in a full background. And then once I have that, I do the thing here, the dev. So I'm going to have two guys, which is start the server. And if I start the server and if it doesn't complain, I think everything is good. I start it. And everything is not good. It's never good when I change the SQL. I don't know why. And well, that's not the SQL fault. Sometime I had a cargo watch. You can also do a cargo watch here. I could have done a cargo watch dash what? SQL. Yep. I have always a problem here. I need to have night works. Yeah, I forgot that. That was my mistake. So night works. So that's good. And usually what I do as a second one over there is I have my quick dev. And so today, and that might change over time, but today I'm using my quick dev as an integration test in a way, or not test. Yeah, more kind of a sanity check. Yeah, so I'm doing that. And if that works, it means that everything works. Now, everything is going to work because, so this is good. We log in, we have all the data and everything. And everything is going to work because we didn't take too much risk there. And the reason why I run it, because exactly what I have. It's somehow, I don't know why I added braces over there. I forgot the stuff. So the syntax of SQL, somehow I miss stuff sometimes. So this is why I do that. And then once I do that, I'm going to start writing the entity, and then the trick that we're going to have to do now is before we're going to have to create an org. Yeah, so we're going to have doing an insert here, the org, the demo, and then we're going to have to add the user to the org. So we'll have an org user table. We might have user underscore org. This way we solve our conf underscore message problem. Because if you start with user underscore, this means that it's a link to user. So at least for this case, might be good. So anyway, so I think that is going to conclude today. We didn't fully add org, but we talk about a lot of production concept. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, feel free to jump into the Discord, which I think, I don't know if it's there. Feel free to give me feedback all the time. So I'm going to do some pollings for you guys. Hopefully we can grow this membership over time, such as, the more the merrier, because sometimes you have people asking some cool questions, but having, even 2 people here, very advanced users, is good. And then feel free to jump into my free, my ad hoc, my flash live stream in a way that goes away after, but this is always things, but this one is good. So we're going to do the next one in the next week or a couple of weeks. And I will ask the time, but I think weekdays, noon, like that, works good. I will try to avoid the Friday, because Friday is a little bit, tricky. And then one of these days, I might do also one on the weekend, perhaps, if it works. Okay, so until thank you a lot for joining, and until next one, happy coding.